In a frozen wilderness, a scarred lone wolf makes a final stand to shield a fleeing mother and her child from the darkness hunting them, a haunting, tender tale of survival, sacrifice, and an unbreakable bond. Let's begin. Snow muffled the world like a thick quilt. It swallowed every sound but the faint crunch of paws pressing into the ice. The trees stood still as if listening. And somewhere between them, amber eyes watched. The wolf was an old one. His coat was more silver than gray now, patchy from past winters. He carried his ribs like a memory of hunger. A deep scar slashed across his left shoulder, old hunter's steel, perhaps, or the teeth of another predator. But his eyes were steady, glowing faint in the half-light of the woods. He was following them. The woman didn't know. She walked with her head down, face wrapped in a frayed woolen scarf. Her boots were worn nearly to the sole. Snow clung to her skirts. A small boy, no more than 6, clutched her hand with mittened fingers and stumbled to keep up. "Almost there, Jamie," she murmured. Her voice cracked like dry wood. "Where's there?" the boy asked. His cheeks were red, eyes round and tired. "Somewhere warm." It was a lie. She didn't know where. She only knew they had to keep moving. The wolf's ears twitched. He could hear her voice, soft, low, like the murmur of a stream under ice. It stirred something in him he didn't want to remember. A storm was building. The air smelled sharp, like crushed pine and iron. Clouds pressed low to the earth, heavy with snow. When the wind rose, Eleanor tightened her grip on Jamie's hand. "We need to find shelter." The boy nodded, too cold to speak. He began to hum under his breath, a tuneless little sound that trembled in the air. The wolf froze. That sound. It was small, weak, like the cries of a pup in winter. He shut his eyes against the memory, but it was there anyway, his own litter, long dead, their cries fading in the dark. He opened his eyes again, and he kept following. They found a shallow cave at the base of a slope. Not much, just an outcropping of rock and a dry patch beneath it. Eleanor eased Jamie down, pulling off his wet boots and wrapping his feet in her shawl. "Good boy," she whispered, brushing ice from his hair. "Stay close. I'll make a fire." Her hands shook as she struck flint against steel. The spark caught, and a small flame bloomed, weak and wavering. The smell of smoke curled upward into the snow-heavy air. Jamie curled against her side. His lips were pale. "Tell me a story, Mama." Her throat ached. "What kind of story?" "One where the good ones win." She smiled faintly. "All right." She told him of a little bird who flew south every winter, only to lose its way and land in the cold woods. The bird thought it would die. But then a great wolf came, and instead of eating the bird, he curled around it and kept it warm until spring. Jamie's breathing slowed. He rested his head against her shoulder. Outside, snow began to fall harder. The wolf watched from the trees. He could smell the faint sweetness of fire, the human warmth, the boy's scent mingling with the woman's. Something shifted in the air. A dry snap, twig breaking. His ears flicked. He wasn't the only one here. In the shadows, another shape moved, low to the ground, lean and hungry. A dog. Then another. Wild things, ribs sharp under mangy fur. Their eyes glinted in the dark. The wolf growled low in his chest. Inside the cave, Eleanor stirred. She thought she heard something outside, a faint sound, like claws on ice. She tightened her hold on Jamie. The firelight flickered. Shadows danced across the rock walls. Then she saw them. 2 pairs of eyes in the dark. Low. Yellow. Moving closer. Her breath caught. She grabbed a stick from the fire and held it out, her arm trembling. "Stay back." The dogs crept forward, snarling. Their teeth flashed in the dim light. Eleanor's heart hammered. Jamie stirred, murmuring in his sleep. And then, a sound split the night. Deep, resonant. A growl that seemed to rise from the bones of the earth. The dogs froze. Amber eyes blazed in the darkness. The wolf stepped into the light. He moved slowly, deliberate, shoulders rolling under his thick fur. His growl deepened, vibrating through the air. The dogs lowered their heads but didn't retreat. The wolf bared his teeth. A rumble rolled from his chest like thunder. The first dog lunged. The wolf met it head-on. Teeth clashed. Fur flew. A yelp split the cold air. The second dog circled, but the wolf turned on it with sudden speed. Another snap of jaws. Another cry. Blood spattered the snow. At last, the dogs fled, tails between their legs. Silence returned. Eleanor stood frozen, the fire stick still clutched in her hand. Her breath came fast, fogging the air. The wolf turned to her. For a long moment, they stared at each other. He didn't move closer. She didn't move away. Jamie stirred. His small voice broke the silence. "Mama." "Shoo," she whispered, never taking her eyes off the wolf. The boy's eyes opened, bleary and wide. He saw the wolf and smiled faintly. "He's not bad," he murmured. "He's cold, Mama." Eleanor's grip tightened on the stick. She should chase it off. But her hands wouldn't move. The wolf blinked slowly. Then, without a sound, he turned and padded back into the dark. The fire crackled. Snow whispered against the rocks outside. Eleanor exhaled shakily. Jamie curled back into her arms, already half asleep again. "Mama." "Yes, love." "Will he come back?" She didn't answer. But outside, unseen in the trees, amber eyes glimmered. And the wolf settled down to watch the firelight flicker in the snow. Snow melted slowly into ash where the fire burned low. Eleanor stared into it, her lips pale, her fingers absently stroking Jamie's damp hair. She hadn't moved for hours, not since the wolf had vanished back into the dark. But she could feel him still. Out there. Jamie murmured something in his sleep and curled tighter against her side. When the embers hissed and gave off their final breath of heat, Eleanor knew she had to rise. The cold would take them both if they stayed much longer. "Up, darling," she whispered. Her voice was softer than she meant it to be, fragile from holding back tears all night. "We have to move." Jamie groaned but obeyed, rubbing his eyes with his small fists. Outside, the world was white and blinding. Wind cut across Eleanor's cheeks like knives, and her boots crunched hard on the crusted snow. They hadn't gone far before Eleanor felt it again. That prickle at the back of her neck. She glanced behind. The forest was still. But too still. The wolf had been following since first light. His paw pads burned from old frostbite scars, but he pressed on, never letting the pair out of his sight. The child had left something behind, a small piece of bread in the snow. Purposeful. A gift. The wolf sniffed it once and took it delicately in his jaws. Hours later, Eleanor led Jamie to the edge of a frozen creek. She crouched to test the ice and caught sight of her reflection in its glassy surface. She barely recognized herself. Her skin was wan, her eyes shadowed. A wild thing, just like the wolf. "Why's he following us?" Jamie asked. Eleanor startled. She'd thought the boy hadn't noticed. "I don't know," she admitted. "Because he wants to help." She said nothing. But when she looked back, she saw him. Farther than she expected, but close enough for his amber eyes to catch hers. That evening, they stopped beneath a fir tree heavy with snow. Eleanor gathered kindling with clumsy, red fingers while Jamie sat cross-legged, humming again. The wolf appeared at the edge of the clearing. He didn't approach. He didn't growl. He only stood there, still as stone, watching. Jamie grinned. "Hi, friend," he said softly. When the fire had been coaxed to life, Eleanor pulled the last strip of dried meat from her satchel. She held it out in her palm, fingers trembling. "Here," she murmured. "I don't know why I'm doing this." The wolf didn't move. His ears twitched. Jamie spoke, voice quiet but sure. "He's scared." The wolf lowered his head but didn't take a step closer. His nose lifted, testing the air, then he lay down in the snow a few yards away and rested his head on his paws. Eleanor lowered her hand, unsure if she was disappointed or relieved. Later that night, Eleanor sat awake while Jamie slept. She took out one of her folded letters from deep in her coat. The edges were smudged with soot and oil. She unfolded it and read under her breath. "Jamie, if you ever read this, know I did not run because I was weak. I ran because I wanted you to grow up without fear. You deserve a quiet life, not one of shadows and slammed doors. I will love you even when the world does not." The paper trembled. Outside, a low growl drifted through the trees. The wolf had moved closer. Eleanor bolted upright, heart hammering. She saw his shape in the dark, standing stiff, hackles raised. Then she heard it too. A faint crunch of snow. Not his paws. Heavier. More deliberate. Someone was following them. At first light, Eleanor and Jamie packed their few belongings. She hoisted her satchel over her shoulder and turned to the boy. "Today we move fast," she said. "No stopping." "Will he come too?" Jamie asked. Eleanor glanced behind them. The wolf had gone. "I don't know." But when they stepped into the woods, she caught sight of him again, weaving silently between the trees. By midday, they reached a narrow pass where cliffs rose on either side. Snow was falling hard again. Eleanor's feet ached, but she pressed on. The wolf stopped abruptly. Eleanor turned. His ears were pricked. His body taut. A shape appeared at the far end of the pass. A man in a heavy coat, rifle slung across his back. Eleanor's stomach turned to ice. Her husband had found them. The wolf growled low. The sound sent a shiver through Eleanor's bones. Jamie clung to her skirt. "Mama, what is it?" "Don't speak," she whispered. The man shouted something in the distance. His voice was carried by the wind, faint but sharp. "Ellie, don't make this harder. You can't hide forever." Eleanor's hands clenched into fists. She turned to the wolf, staring at him as though he could understand. "Please," she whispered, "help us." The wolf tilted his head. Snowflakes clung to his fur. Then he stepped forward. They fled into the trees, Eleanor clutching Jamie's hand so tight he whimpered. The wolf ran ahead, weaving a path through the underbrush. Behind them, the man's shouts grew louder. Eleanor's breath came ragged. Her boots slipped on ice. The wolf stopped suddenly and growled. He lunged at a snowdrift, scattering a pair of startled hares. It wasn't the man this time. But the wolf was warning her. Danger could come from anywhere. When night fell, Eleanor found a small hollow between two rocks. She pulled Jamie into her lap and tried to still her shaking hands. The wolf circled the clearing once, then lay down a few feet away. "Why does he stay?" she whispered. Jamie yawned. Because he knows we're his. Eleanor stared at the wolf. His amber eyes caught the firelight. And for the first time, she didn't feel entirely alone. The sun barely broke through the clouds the next morning. It hung low and pale, casting a thin light over the snowbound forest. Eleanor walked ahead, her boots sinking deep, skirts catching on briars hidden beneath the drifts. Behind her, Jamie shuffled slowly, dragging a stick along the icy ground. The wolf trailed them at a distance. Not so close he seemed tame, but not far enough to be wild anymore. His presence was steady now, like the hush of falling snow. Jamie was the first to speak. "Is he ours yet?" Eleanor glanced over her shoulder. The wolf padded silently behind, amber eyes fixed on them. "No," she said softly. "He's not anyone's. But he stays." "Yes," she admitted. "He stays." Jamie smiled faintly and began humming. The wolf's ears twitched at the sound. By midday, they found a grove where the trees grew thick and close, their dark trunks breaking the endless whiteness. Eleanor crouched to check Jamie's boots. His toes were numb and damp from melted snow. "Let's rest here," she murmured. She built a small fire, shielding the flame with her coat as the wind clawed through the grove. The wolf sat nearby, his back to them, staring out into the woods. His fur was dusted with snow. Jamie edged closer to him, a crust of bread in his mittened hand. "Here," the boy whispered. "It's for you." The wolf turned his head slightly but didn't move. "Jamie," Eleanor warned, but her voice lacked conviction. The boy left the bread on the snow between them and backed away. The wolf waited until Jamie was seated by the fire again before stepping forward. He sniffed the bread once, then took it gently between his teeth. Later that afternoon, they came upon an abandoned cabin hidden in a hollow. Its roof sagged under the weight of snow, and the shutters hung crooked on rusted hinges. Eleanor stopped in the doorway. "It'll do," she murmured. Inside, the air smelled of rot and pine resin. The floor creaked under her boots, but there were no fresh footprints. Safe enough for now. She set Jamie on a rickety chair and went to check the windows, stuffing gaps with scraps of cloth from her satchel. The wolf circled the cabin once, then lay down outside the door. When the fire was built, Eleanor sat near it, her hands outstretched to the warmth. Jamie curled up on a pile of blankets. "You're not scared anymore," Jamie said sleepily. "Not so much," Eleanor admitted. "You shouldn't be. He's good." The boy's eyes fluttered shut. Eleanor waited until Jamie's breathing deepened before pulling out another letter. She unfolded it carefully, smoothing the creases. Her lips moved silently as she read. "Jamie, I don't know if I will live long enough to see you grow. But if I don't, know that I ran to give you the chance. You deserve mornings without fear and nights without raised voices. You deserve everything I could not give you." Her fingers trembled. She refolded the paper and tucked it back into her coat. Outside, the wolf lifted his head. His ears pricked. Eleanor froze. A sound. Footsteps in the snow. Heavy. Measured. The wolf growled low, deep in his chest. Eleanor's breath caught. She moved to the window, peeling back the corner of a tattered curtain. There, far off but moving closer, a man's shape in the snow. Her husband. The wolf growled again, louder this time. His fur bristled as he rose to his feet. Eleanor's pulse thundered in her ears. She whispered to the wolf through the cracked door. "What do I do?" He stared at her, silent now, as if waiting. Eleanor grabbed Jamie and pulled him to her chest. "We can't stay," she whispered. But when she stepped outside, the wolf blocked her path. He stood stiff, muscles tense, gaze fixed on the woods. She shook her head. "We have to go. He'll find us." The wolf didn't move. Eleanor knelt before him, clutching Jamie tight. "If you're going to leave us, leave now," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "But if you're staying, I need to know." The wolf lowered his head. Snowflakes melted against his warm breath. And then he stayed. Night fell heavy and fast. Eleanor barred the door with an old plank. She sat with Jamie in her lap, her hand resting on the wolf's scarred neck as he lay curled at their feet. Somewhere in the dark, the sound of boots on snow echoed faintly, drawing closer. The wolf lifted his head. The wind howled low that night, slipping through cracks in the cabin walls. Eleanor could hear it whispering her name, or maybe that was just her fear, rising up like a tide she could no longer hold back. Jamie slept fitfully in the corner, bundled in all the blankets they had. The small boy's chest rose and fell, quick and shallow. Eleanor brushed his damp hair from his forehead, her fingers trembling. She could feel him out there. Her husband. Boots in the snow. A voice shouting her name hours ago, carried by the wind. Then silence. The kind of silence that comes before a predator strikes. The wolf was sitting by the door, still as stone. His head turned slightly at every creak in the woods, every groan of wind. Amber eyes unblinking. Eleanor whispered to him, "You can run. You don't have to do this." He didn't move. The sound came first, a faint crunch of snow. Deliberate. Slow. Eleanor's stomach tightened. She rose to her feet, clutching Jamie's hand. "Get in the cellar," she said softly. "Mama." No arguments. Now. Jamie obeyed, crawling into the small trapdoor beneath the floorboards. She kissed his forehead, her lips lingering just a second too long. "You're my whole heart," she whispered. "Don't make a sound." She shut the trapdoor gently. A shadow passed by the window. Her husband's voice broke the quiet. "Ellie, I know you're in there." The wolf growled, low and guttural. "Open the door and no one gets hurt." Eleanor stood still, her hand hovering over a rusted knife on the table. She glanced at the wolf. His ears were flat. His body tense. "You're going to get yourself killed," she whispered. The wolf's tail thumped once against the floorboards. A choice, she realized. He was choosing them. The door burst open. Snow swirled in, white and blinding. Her husband stood there, rifle in hand, two other men flanking him. His eyes were hard, his jaw set. "You think you can take my boy from me?" he hissed. "He's not yours," Eleanor said, her voice breaking but steady. He raised the rifle. And then the wolf moved. It happened fast, a blur of gray fur and white snow. The wolf lunged at the man closest to the door, teeth sinking deep into his arm. The rifle clattered to the floor. The second man shouted, fumbling for his pistol. Eleanor grabbed a log from the fire and swung it, hard, knocking the pistol from his grasp. Sparks flew. Jamie's muffled cry echoed faintly from beneath the floor. The wolf fought like a storm, silent but ferocious, his body a streak of muscle and fur. He drove the first man back into the snow, snapping his jaws so close the man screamed and fled. The second man hesitated, blood on his sleeve, and then turned and ran too. Only Eleanor's husband remained. He raised a knife. "I'll gut that beast." But before he could take a step, the wolf was on him. They crashed into the snow outside, a tangle of claws and teeth. The man screamed, striking at the wolf's scarred shoulder. Blood stained the snow, some of it the man's, some of it the wolf's. Eleanor grabbed the fallen rifle and leveled it at her husband. "Enough!" she shouted. He froze. "You've taken enough from me. You won't take him too." Her finger tightened on the trigger. The man's eyes widened. He raised his hands and stumbled back. Then he fled, vanishing into the storm. Silence fell. Eleanor dropped the rifle and ran to the wolf. He was lying in the snow, chest rising and falling shallowly. Blood matted his fur, but his eyes, those amber eyes, were still bright. She knelt beside him, pressing her forehead to his. "You stupid, beautiful thing," she whispered. "You didn't have to stay." His breath fogged against her cheek. But he had stayed. Jamie climbed out of the trapdoor, tears streaming down his face. He ran to Eleanor and the wolf, burying his small hands in the wolf's thick fur. "Is he ours now?" Jamie whispered. Eleanor's throat ached. "Yes," she said. "He's ours." The wolf's tail thumped once in the snow. Snow falls softly. Eleanor and Jamie sit by the fire inside the cabin. The wolf lies at their feet, his breathing deep and slow, one ear twitching at every sound in the woods outside. Eleanor takes out one last letter and burns it in the fire. All but one. She tucks the remaining letter into Jamie's small hands. "This one's for him," she murmurs, glancing at the sleeping wolf. Jamie smiled faintly, and the silence swept in. Sometimes silence leads you exactly where you're supposed to be. If this story touched you, consider subscribing, or tell us where you're watching from.